afternoon, and good afternoon. How are you guys? How's everything? Today it's going to be a gear review. Another. This time, what we have? We have a living legend. Why living legend? I'll get to you in a minute for this. That's D850. Yep. That's Nikon D850. And so let's talk why this camera is living legend. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, based on the machines that were released, like D600, D610, D750, and what were missing on those machines. And after using the legends like D3, D3S, D4, D4S, D700, you start expecting a lot, because Nikon made a lot of Nikon makes us kind of used to of the good stuff by releasing those machines like D3, D3S. So we always expect, okay, every next machine is going to be good. And when D600, D610, D750 was released, we were expecting the same, but those machines were not up to live up to the level which we were expecting, right? So then D800 was released, and D800 was kind of we were looking for that it may be replacement of D700, but that was not the case. D800 was itself a separate league. It was totally different league of its own. And we were not, D800 was not the replacement of D700. Then we saw D810, which was still the case. Those machines were having some kind of focus issue, back focusing issue, or front focusing, or whatever. So when D850 was announced, everybody was just waiting and hoping that whatever missing in D800 or D800E or D810 or D700, we would love to have those things in D850, and this is exactly what the case is. D850 is live up to the expectation for every photographer that used Nikon, regardless new machines or old machines. This is the only camera in the modern days DSLR, which was released in last 5 years or 6 years, that really impressed in every perspective, not only in terms of image quality, build quality, and the features that this machine is specifically providing. Now, I don't want to go through specs, because these specs you can find on internet anytime, anywhere. 46 megapixel, 25,600 ISO, blah blah blah, dynamic range, blah blah blah. I don't want to go that, because you can see the sample images and everything. Now, I'm going to talk when I start using it, what I have experienced, which was not present in the previous generations of the D800 series and the D700 or D3 or D3S or D4 or D4S. First off, shutter. The shutter of this machine was built up totally different. Why? Because of the megapixels. Now, this is something which you may not able to relate, that what shutter mechanism has to do with the megapixel. Well, it does. It does a lot. How? Let me explain. This is not 12 megapixel or 24 megapixel. This is 46 megapixel camera. So when you have a high resolution, so high resolution means even a slight vibration into the machine experience, any kind of slight vibration, that will be reflecting on your image. That's called micro blur, and that micro blur can be caused by pressing this shutter, by even touching the lens, or even by touching the body, regardless you are having on tripod or you are having it hand hold. This is the first thing when I noticed, and I knew that it was gonna happen. So I enlist a series of steps that you really need to do if you want those micro blur to be completely out from your image. There are certain steps I will explain in a minute. So the shutter mechanism that was built totally ground up. It's made from very heavy magnesium alloy, and the shutter is basically more kind of a damping. Damping means when the shutter moves, it creates vibration. It's by default in every DSLR or even in mirrorless. It happens. When those shutter blade moves, it produces vibration in the body, right? So those shutter blades were made with a special metal. I forget the name. Those metal basically tend to absorb the vibration. So in this way, you will have less vibration into the body. So less vibration means less micro blur, because 46 megapixel going to show you every single mistake. You believe it or not, but if you do a single mistake in any of your images, that will be reflecting on your D850 files big time. Not once, in fact by 4 times. How? Let me explain. D700 was 12 megapixel, right? So 1 megapixel, D800 was 700 was 12 megapixel, right? This is D850, that's 46 megapixel. So in compared to D700, the D850 has 4 times the pixel. 4 times. So if you are having an blur or high ISO or any mistake on 1 pixel on D700, the same mistake on D800E is by 4 times, because it comes with 4 times the resolution. So you have to be very, very careful when you're operating D850. This is what I said when first time I started using this machine. This is what I said to the public, and everybody was laughed on me, which I don't care. I told this that you cannot choose D850. D850 is going to choose you. How good you are. Are you really worthy to have this machine? When people start using D850, everybody was complaining, oh, high ISO, oh, it's got, my lens are not giving me sharp results. It's not the lens. It's not the lens issue. It's that stupid photographer who not able to understand what this machine is, how it needs to be operated. Last week, 4 or 5 days ago, I was having a conversation in one of the D850 groups on Facebook. And the guy was asked this question that I have D850, I need to know how to operate this machine. So I enlist those 4 steps, that if you own D850, you need to follow those 4 steps. So you will get the best results. And one of the wildlife photographers start jumping on me and start telling me that, oh, you don't know how D850 works. If we follow your steps, any user will going to kill their hopes for using this D850. And I didn't argue with that guy, because that guy really don't know anything about other than wildlife photography. So I didn't, wasted my time on the argument. But those 4 steps, that if you own D850, you have to do these 4 steps. First step, you have to use tripod. No matter what, you have to use tripod by default. Regardless if you are shooting portrait, you are shooting landscape, you are shooting architecture, you are shooting a still life, you are shooting wedding, I don't care. You have to use tripod. This machine demands tripod. Okay? Even you are getting sharp images, you are getting those sharp images at 2000 shutter speed, 4000 shutter speed. That's where the chances of micro blur going to be less. But what about low light shooting? That's where you cannot shoot at 4000 or 2000 shutter speed, right? You need tripod. Second, you have to use mirror flip. Mirror flip is this thing. Mirror up. You have to use this mirror up. What it does? What it does means, it basically flip up the mirror. So whenever you shoot, because this is a DSLR, there is a mirror, right? So when you press, the mirror goes up, sensor get exposed, and then shutter opens, and then sensor exposed. So this mirror, when it flips up, it produces vibration, right? This is where you have to choose this mirror up option. So what is going to happen? You have to press shutter twice, not once, twice. When you press first time, the mirror goes up. Then you are going to press shutter again. Then shutter will opens. So this is by default that you have to do. Third step, you have to introduce exposure delay mode. Now what that means, what exposure delay? I'm not talking about this timer. You see this timer? No, I'm not talking about that timer. I'm talking about exposure delay mode. What exposure delay mode is happening, that first off, you choose the mirror flips up. Then you press one more time the shutter release button. It opens the shutter. So when shutter opens, it also produce vibration, and then suddenly your sensors start getting exposure. No, you don't want that, because when shutter opens, it's also produce vibration. So you have to wait for camera up to certain time, those vibration gets eliminated, and then sensor exposed for the scene. So exposure delay, what it does, you press first time shutter, then it opens the lift of the mirror. Then you press one more time, then your shutter plate going to open. Then the exposure delay mode that you have to dial, it will wait camera for that amount of time, and then it will expose for the sensor. In this way, whatever vibration happening, that's completely going to be dissolved. Let me show you where that mode is. You have to go into the this menu. Sorry. What the hell? This shooting in display, E, A, B, C, D. In the D menu, you go there, and then you go on this exposure delay. That's D5. This is D5. In this D5, let me show you. This is D5. You see, I have dialed 2 seconds. Exposure delay, this one. So this exposure delay, not this one, this exposure delay, 2 seconds. So in this way, you have to press your shutter twice every single time, but it's totally worth. If you are shooting outdoor using portrait lens like 85mm or 105mm, that's fine. You are shooting at 1000 shutter speed. If you are shooting at 1.4 outdoor natural light, then you don't need tripod. But it's still advisable that you have to choose tripod. D850, it's not going to tolerate or not going to ignore any of your mistakes. Like I said, you cannot choose D850. D850 is going to choose you. It may sound rude or crazy, but the people who are owning D850, they will agree with me. This machine demands respect. This machine demands discipline. I never thought that I will be so much stressing about operating as any camera in a certain way, in a specific means, like D850. I never thought that I'm going to say this to you guys. But trust me, D850 is totally different thing. It's not any typical DSLR. It requires a special protocol. It requires your full attention. This machine have so much in it that you cannot ignore. Discipline, your attention, the way you need to operate, you cannot operate D850 just like D750 or D610 or any other Canon camera. No way. It's not about D850. It's about every single high resolution camera needs to be operated. Any camera which is more than 30 megapixel, you have to operate that camera in exactly the same way which I explained in this video so far. By default, even A7R2, even Canon 5DS, even D850. Now you are going to have Z8, 60 megapixel, A7R4, 60 megapixel, medium format, 50 megapixel. All these cameras requires these amount of details, these steps, these protocols that you have to follow. Now, enough with the protocols. Next big thing which this DSLR offers, which no other DSLR, which at the time of the release of this camera, no DSLR was offering. And what it was? Focus peaking. Yep. Focus peaking was the next big thing which I loved about this camera. Why? Well, I used all the manual focus lens. I didn't know that. But I saw into the video that it does focus peaking, and I made one video before. I was using 400 mm f3.5 lens, AIS, that's manual focus lens, and I used that lens on D850. And by the way, I used Fuji, I used Sony, and I used Canon. You have to switch the camera into the manual mode. That's where the focus peaking, on the back of the D camera enables. You have to switch camera into the manual mode. But in D850, that's not the case. In Nikon cameras, that's not the case. Even if you are shooting at full autofocus, you just twist the focus ring and suddenly focus peaking kicks in automatically by itself. That's the advantage. It means that you don't have to switch the camera into manual focus or the lens. Let me show you. That's a 18 to 35. Alright, I'm going to use that lens. By the way, this is the way you have to, every single time you have to choose changing the lens. The camera needs to be upside down because the dust cannot go inside the sensor. That's how we change the sensor. Change the lens. Alright. Okay. The camera, it's in, the camera is over here. It's in autofocus. Alright. And what autofocus I am? Single point AFS. Single point AFS. Okay. Now wait. You're seeing me? Right? Alright. Now if I'm going to rotate the focus, it will show you the I'm not sure you can see this, but it gives you that focus peaking into the DSLR. So I love about this feature, and that's one of the features which I really love. Now, when it comes to the image quality, I'm not going to go into the image quality because image quality by default, it's Nikon. The best dynamic range, the best ISO. By the way, yeah, ISO. I have to tell you about ISO about this D850. When D800 was launched, I used D800, I used D800E, I used D810. All these iterations of camera till D850, don't think that that's 46 megapixels, so you can shoot at any ISO. No, it cannot. The D800 maximum usable ISO was 400. Although the D800 was up to shoot at 6400 ISO, that's maximum rating. But when it comes to landscape and all these things, the the D800 was 400 ISO maximum. D800 at 800 ISO, that's stretching too much. But 400 was the top that you can go, and you can clean your image without any weird effect in post processing. When D810 was launched, that range was doubled. So instead of 400 ISO, D810 was able to use up to 800 ISO maximum usable. You can stretch up to 1600, but depends on the condition. Maximum usable ISO for D810 was 800. In D850, that range is further extended up to 1600 ISO. It's double from 800. Up to 1600, you can use this machine easily. Now, some of you will going to say, well, I have shoot at 6400 ISO, images was clean. Of course they were clean. But if you go zoom 100%, you will see grain. No matter what, you will see grain. Especially in the shadow area. That's where those grains are clearly visible. If I'm going to shoot at 6400 ISO, this black background, a lot of noise. Even though my face will be clean. That's not an issue. That's what these machines are all about. Every high resolution machine, you cannot shoot at high ISO like D5 or 1DX Mark III or Sony A7 IV. You cannot. Lower the megapixel, the high the ISO you can go with. Higher the megapixel, the low the ISO you can go with. That's a simple, straight rule. I don't want to go into the science behind it because it's too complicated, and I want to make this video as easy and as simple as possible. So D850 for me is the benchmark for the DSLR which you can offer, and you can get the best from any machine. By the way, I have mistakenly said that you have to switch, like in order to get focus peaking, you have to rotate the dial. You have to switch this to manual focus from here or from there. That's where you can go with. It's in the mirrorless. My apologies. I made the mistake. You have to switch the camera over here to manual focus in order to get focus peaking. In Z7, that's not the case. In Z7, even if you are fully autofocus, you change the focus ring and still you get the focus peaking. That was in Z7 and Z6 in the Z mount camera, not into the DSLR. In DSLR, you need to switch to manual focus in order to get focus peaking. About focus peaking, I have used this camera focus peaking in 400 mm, in 600 mm, in wide angle, in 85 mm, and it nailing the focus perfectly. Of course, I cannot get the focus peaking into the viewfinder because this viewfinder is optical. It's not electrical. But I can still get behind over here. This is where I can get all the focus peaking. Right? Wait, let me show you. Now you can see the focus peaking. I hope so. Anyways, tilt screen, I don't have to mention, that's the one of the best that you can get. By the way, that's another camera which I can click and take the picture. That's another way to take images without any micro blur. So you configure the screen and you can touch. Let me show you. See? I just took the shot. See? So it means that I have to just touch the screen and get the shot. In this way, I don't have to introduce micro blur. That's one of the cool features. This machine also comes with focus stacking, like for all the G-type lenses, all the E-type lenses, or even the D-type lenses, because that machine comes with the focus motor into it. That's where you can choose even the D-type lenses for autofocus. That's the best thing about this machine. That's why it's a living legend. So the focus stacking feature, what it does, that you have to configure the camera, that camera is not going to zoom for you. It will going to focus stack for you. It will take multiple shots for you with a certain amount of focus distance. It change the focus distance, take a shot. Then it change another focus distance, take a shot. Another focus distance, take a shot. How many shots you need to choose? It's up to you. How much the focus it needs to move, that's also your choice. So you can do that. I did that, and I took the series of shots from foreground focus all the way to infinity. This is how I did. And then you can take those raw files and take into the Photoshop and get it done. Now that reminds me, when I said word files, man, that's one of the that's one of the worst thing about D850. The disadvantage. Well, it's not a disadvantage, but it comes at a disadvantage, and it is the file size. The file size of D850 so freaking huge. It's one raw file, 100 megabyte. So in this way, in 1 gigabyte, you will get 10 files. So 32 GB card, you will get 320 shots. In 64 GB card, you will get 640 shots. That's it. And if you are at event, doing event photography, where you would take at least 1,000 shots, so you have to carry at least 4 cards of 64 gigabyte. 4 cards. Why 4? Let me tell you. One is XQD and one is SD, right? This is the XQD card. Because the data file, it's so big, and that machine shoots 5 frames per second without battery grip, and with battery grip it shoots 9 frames per second. So 5 frames per second right now in this stage, and with battery grip it shoots 9 frames per second, right? So people, when they saw that it shoots 9 frames per second, they start using this machine for wildlife photography. And I was like, seriously? For wildlife? This machine, of course, I can make this machine for do it all. Do it all kind of photography you can do. Wedding, portrait, landscape, still life, photojournalism, web, wildlife, press, photo, whatever. You think about it, this machine can do it. But how efficiently? This is the problem. You can use this machine for Olympics, for any football match, cricket match. You can use it. But this is where you will be shooting in burst mode. If you are shooting in wildlife or bird photography or Olympic games, you are shooting in burst mode like 9 frames per second. That not only going to fill the card so quickly, but it will be hard for you to choose and process that data. It's easy. This machine requires patience. It's called in our native language संयम से इस्तेमाल करो, सुकून से इस्तेमाल करो. This machine doesn't require any rush hour. Although it can handle all the rush you throw on it, it can handle. But if you are shooting wildlife, bird photography, this is where D500 is more capable. Why? Because D500 and D850 has the same resolution. Now, some of us gonna say, how come? D500 is 20 megapixel. This machine, D850, is 46 megapixel. How come they get the same resolution? Well, they are. Because the pixel density, number of pixels per square millimeter for D500 and D850 is the same. It's the same. So when I take a shot from D850 and I take the same shot using the same lens from D500 and I zoom in both shots at 100%, I'll get the same resolution, same angle of view. Simple. Now, so another advantage for D500 is the autofocus 153 autofocus point is spread edge to edge, literally edge to edge like this, from D500, and D850 it's like this. So you have your focus points are moving in this region. Not good for wildlife. But if you are D500, that's where your focus points are, edge to edge. So in this way, you can track the subject all the way. You can track the subject in D500 much more easily. In D500, you are stuck over here. So that's why D and buffer for D500 is much deeper for wildlife and bird photography. Goes up to 200 frames. This D850 buffer goes up to 30 frames depending how many bits, 12-bit or 14-bit you are shooting. Alright, what kind of resolution you are shooting. It offers small RAW, medium RAW, large RAW files. So the number of megapixel in the final RAW files is also changes for D850. That also going to change your buffer depth. Alright, so that's the case. In D500, D850, it's around 30 frames on average, the buffer, somewhere around 30 frames. In D500, that's 200 frames. So which one logically good for wildlife photography? You have to think about it. Now, we are talking about D850, not D500. I just, because we talk about number of frames per second, that's where I compared in brief why D850. You can do wildlife. You can do everything with this machine. That's why Nikon built that. That's why it's living legend. This is literally 2-at-all camera. 2-at-all camera for everything you throw on it. That machine is going to chew it and throw it, spit out for you. And I haven't seen any camera which can literally go to, which can take the beat or, even the physically outside into the field, and the image quality that you're gonna throw on it or whatever. It takes everything and it offers you so much flexibility. By the way, when it comes to flexibility, this camera offers so much customization which is not even present in D780. This is almost 2 years old machine. D780 was just released like less than 6 months ago, right? This machine offers more customizable feature than D780. I can configure these buttons like ISO button or movie button to anything. I can configure this movie button into changing the sensor size. Like I can shoot in full frame, I can shoot in crop, I can shoot in square format. I just configured this thing. Let me show you. Mode. Let me show you. I go to controls, control assignment, done. All right. Okay. I just configured it. Look. When I'm going to press this movie button, you see that's full frame. That's another area. That's crop sensor. That's full frame. That's square format. You see? I just configured this movie button for configuring the sensor size. Talk about here. So this is where, that's one feature for customization, right? I can configure all those areas for different type of features, and all these features, even I configured this. You see this? That's the focus button. I can choose the focus point move. I can move the focus point using this, right? I configured this lever for spot metering. Like right now, my metering for the camera is matrix. You can see that over here. It is here. It's matrix, alright? It's matrix metering. But when I press this button, look, I'll show you. Okay, here it is. That's where matrix metering is. But when I press this button, you see, just look over here. Just look over here. When I press the lever, it goes to spot. It goes to spot. That's another customization. If I'm shooting bird, and the bird is somehow in a backlit situation where the sun behind the bird and my camera metering is not able to get the real exposure for the bird. So I put the focus point on the bird and I press this lever, turn my matrix metering into spot metering and get the focus of the bird and get the shot. So that's what I really love about this camera. This camera is a living legend, and in many ways. No other camera from Nikon as we speak is offering these kind of customization, the image quality, the durability of the machine, the dual card slot. Now, if you are going to compare this camera with Z7, Z7 has its own advantage of being mirrorless like EVF. This doesn't have the EVF, but in live view, you can still get the EVF results, right? Another thing, Z7 has one card slot. This has two card slots, so you can take the backup. You can take the backup at the same time, right? Z7 mirrorless. If you drop, there is a higher chances that you may damage the camera. This is magnesium alloy. If you're going to drop it, it's still not going to break the camera. It's much safer than mirrorless, right? You can use all the D-type lenses to do autofocus on D850. In Z7, you cannot use your D-type lenses because the FTZ adapter cannot do autofocus for the Z mount. That's a disadvantage. So you have to rely on manual focus and focus peaking, right? This is where the focus peaking really kicks in. Focus peaking in this is the same just like Z6, just like mirrorless. So kind of half of the feature of Z7 you will get on D850. So why you need Z7? Why not you go with this F-mount camera? This offers almost all the feature of Z7. Of course, not like the EVF, which you can get only in Z7, but imagine the type of lenses that F-mount camera which support with D850 have. You cannot get those lenses, native lenses on Z-mount. It's still coming. It's still a long way to go. But this camera offers all the lenses, offers all those manual focus AIS lenses. It takes all focus on the Z mount, focus on the D-type lenses and stuff. Yeah, D850 is, no, it's not heavy. Trust me, it's not heavy. Let me show you. This is the battery grip, alright? If you are talking about heavy cameras, that D850 is heavy, you haven't used Nikon D3, D3S, D700 with battery grip. Trust me, with this battery grip, this camera is still lightweight than D3, D3S, D4, and even with D700 with battery grip. You cannot compare. It's still lightweight. Don't believe me? Trust me, go and try. Go and try D700 with battery grip. You will find D700 much more heavy than this. And the D700 is only photography. No video in D700. It's 12 megapixel. It's 12-year-old machine. This is the living legend. That's why I'm saying this is a living legend. Z mount, we will make a separate video about the Z mount. Right now my focus is D850, and it does produce capture 4K, 8K time lapse. 8K time lapse, that's the first camera in the history of the DSLR. Now you are hearing about Canon R5, which captures 8K video. This camera was released with this advertisement from Nikon that it can capture 8K time lapse because its resolution supports 8K time lapse. The new 880, its rumors are coming for D880, and also Z8 is coming for the mirrorless, and D880 coming for the F mount. Both will be carrying 60 megapixel image sensor, but keep one thing in mind. Camera is never about the sensor. It's the camera, it's an image processor. Let me show you one. This camera is never about the sensor. It's about image processor. What kind of SNR firmware comes with the camera? What kind of technology built into the camera? This is the first camera which comes with BSI sensor. BSI sensors just give you one-stop better performance in terms of ISO, dynamic range, blah blah blah. Alright? But you can Google about BSI sensor. It's just nothing that the number of pixels are, the wiring of each pixel is on the top, so the light coming on the sensor is less. In BSI sensor, that wiring on the pixel is beneath the sensor, so the more light is coming onto the sensor. That's the only difference between BSI and normal sensor. But the image quality, remember one more thing which is really very critical, very important, and many people don't know about that. Everybody thinks that it's a Sony sensor and Nikon, so that's why it's the best. Nikon produce best quality. Why? Because it's Sony sensor. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. First off, D850 sensor was made by Panasonic, and sensor itself having multiple parts. The sensor, and then below the sensor, it's analog to digital converter. The sensor was designed and manufactured by Panasonic. Beneath the sensor, there is analog to digital converter, which was made by Sony. So Panasonic gave their sensor to Sony to assemble the analog to digital converter beneath the sensor and make the whole sensor assembly in their lab, in Sony lab. So Sony took the main pixel chip from Panasonic and assembled the whole sensor inside their factory. That's why everybody says that, oh, it's a Sony sensor. No, it's not the Sony sensor. The sensor was designed by Panasonic. Go and Google it. I'm telling you, that's the truth. It is assembled by Sony. The part of the different sensor was assembled by Sony because they have the facility. They are the largest supplier of the sensor right now. Panasonic is also, they have their own facility. Yeah. But by the way, if you don't believe about Panasonic, after Sony, the best sensor in the world are manufactured by Panasonic. Go and Google 2 megapixel low light sensor by Panasonic. Just Google that. 2 megapixel low light sensor by Panasonic. You will get a lot of results. Go to the website of Panasonic, see the sample images, what their low light pixel are offering, sensors are offering. They are much better than Sony. Anyways, coming back to the sensor. This camera has Panasonic sensor which is assembled by Sony. Right? Now sensor is just one thing. But to get the juice out from that sensor, it's by Nikon. Now, what Nikon has to do with it? Well, you have an orange. You have orange. The most desi tarika or most homemade, handmade Juice extraction is like you cut the orange into half, and you start squeezing by hand, and you will get some amount of juice from the orange, right? Only. But if you use a machine and you put the orange into that machine, of course by peeling the outer layer, then you will get the maximum juice, right? Simple logic, right? Now what happening is that juice, extracting of juice from the sensor, it's the art, and that's the real art. Every company, that art is basically a software. That software is called SNR firmware. Every company on planet Earth which manufactures camera, they have their own set of SNR firmware which is very confidential. Nobody knows. Nikon have 4 types of sensor suppliers. First, they used to make their own sensors. It was Toshiba, Renesas, Sony. So Renesas and Toshiba, these two were bought by Sony. So now these 3 companies are under Sony name. Toshiba and Nikon used to make their own sensors, which they are not making anymore. So Nikon used to get the sensor from this company, and they use their SNR firmware to get the best juice or best image quality out from that sensor. So this is the thing which the secret weapon of Nikon is not the sensor, is that SNR firmware, is that program which they embedded into their processor, which is called X-Speed processor. So X-Speed processor is basically have the best capability to get the image quality out of any sensor. You gave Nikon any sensor in the world, even Canon sensor, Nikon knows how to get best image quality out from it. Now what do I mean by image quality? I mean the best dynamic range, the ISO performance, those details, image details. So this is the thing. This is the Panasonic sensor or Toshiba sensor. In D7100, Nikon use Toshiba sensor. In D5, they use Renesas sensor. Sorry, D4, they use Renesas sensor. And D3 also the same sensor. Another example, Nikon D700 and D3 both contains the same sensor, but both cameras had different SNR firmware or different software, so their output was totally different. Another example was Nikon D610. D750 has the same sensor of D610, but D750 is famous for low light, for best dynamic range. Why? Because its software inside the D750 is superior than D610. Both got the same sensor. So Nikon main superpower is that software. Nobody talks about it. I don't know why. Whenever you see, and people, especially all the Sony users, they always cry, Nikon got the Sony sensor, that's why they have the best image quality. No, that's not the case. They don't know how their camera sensor works. Nikon got the best SNR. If that's the case, that sensor is the only thing about image quality, then why can't A7R2 or A7R3 supersede D850, both released at the same time? Why D850 scores 100, the only camera which first hit 100 on DxO mark? No other camera did. A7R3 was below D850. Why? If the sensor is the only thing, that's the point. Why Canon still sucks? Their best camera was, which was 90 in the DxO mark rating. That's the highest camera ranking, which is 90, not even 100 or 95. That's Canon 5D Mark IV. Why? Because Canon dynamic range, Canon SNR firmware sucks. Uh, D500, what can you say about D500? Well, I'll make another video on D500. You can tune in on my profile, and I hope maybe tomorrow, same time, I'll make a video about D500. Yeah, let's do that. So, D850, a living legend in many ways. I just enlist all the advantages that this camera equipped with. I cannot say enough about this camera. I am big fan of Nikon old cameras, D3, D3S, D4, D4S. I use them all. My favorite camera of all time, D700. I'm still using that. I love D700 like crazy. But after D700, any other camera which touches my heart is this. Amazing. The image quality, the rendition, the functions. It's amazing. The second best camera, which after D850, which I like, Z6. We'll talk about Z6 some other time. Because for me, this camera is do-it-all camera. Of course, you cannot get the best in every genre like for sports, action, wildlife, but photography, yeah, it can do the job. But not like D500, not like D5. For landscape, there is nothing more best camera in the world than D850. When it comes to portrait, best camera. You give this camera the best lens in the world and then just sit back and enjoy. This camera is going to kill. The skin tones, the depth, the color depth that you will get. It's going to be amazing. Anyways, thank you so much, guys. I was not expecting that I would reach to this point. I will be keeping this video. By the way, you can tune into my YouTube channel, which is called VUEGRAPHY, which is VUEGRAPHY. VUEGRAPHY. It's on YouTube. I am going to upload the same video on YouTube. You can tune in. You will find a lot of content, technical, related to photography on VUEGRAPHY. I also have the same Facebook group called VUE, VUE on Facebook. You can join in. You can tune in. Lots of technical stuff, technical discussion is going all the way on my YouTube channel, VUEGRAPHY, and also at Facebook, it's called VUE, VUE. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys some other time. Stay tuned, stay safe.